How's it going, everybody? It's Sandwhichpants here today, and your boy is fucking tired. I had to go out to work today. I got stuck in the snow 6 or 7 times, and by snow I mean nothing but pure ice. And so my 3.5 hour work day, because I didn't have that much work to do, turned into just over 8.5 hours. I am very sore. I am mildly upset. I am very angry. And I was debating on whether or not I should even do this today because of that. But, you know what, goddammit? We're fucking going. We're doing this. Because I said I would this morning. So, fuck my life, I guess. Whatever. Oh, I'm at least gonna smoke on this blunt while I do it. Let's just gotta kick it here. We're gonna wait for about a few minutes. Let me blast this on Twitter. God, my Twitter moves so goddamn fast now. Okay. Alright. I saw this morning as well, and it was talking about Biden changing up his approach. So you know what? Let's go ahead and hold on. Let's bring you way down to -27, I guess. And let's go ahead and just have some music play in the background. There we go. And everything that I play on this stream, as far as music, is owned by myself, my cousin, and my bass player. The band Kurzias on we're on SoundCloud, and I've got a Google Drive full of all of our shit. So, no copyright. Anyways, I saw this morning, and it was talking about Biden changing tactics and how he's going to have a new approach to foreign policy that hasn't been seen. He's actually, from what I remember, and we're going to go over this, and we'll tell you how much of a positive I think this is, if I think it goes far enough, and what I think we could improve on. Let's go ahead and go over this, and then I'm just going to go straight into playing some Magic, probably. Alright. The Biden Doctrine, if only. The 5 pillars of a new U.S. foreign policy strategy look great on paper, but seem impossible in practice. So I want to see what he's laid out on paper. And we're going to be judging that, and then we'll go in to see if it's going to actually be possible. 3 decades after the United States emerged from the Cold War as the undisputed world power, the Biden administration is inheriting an overstretched, overstrained, and overburdened country, thanks in no small part to the grandiose and reckless neoliberal and neoconservative policies of its predecessors. The Bush Sr. administration presided over unprecedented geopolitical expansion following the dissolution of the Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact, spearheading the enlargement of NATO and launching the first Gulf War that paved the way for permanent U.S. military presence in the greater Middle East, which has been a major failure. So, fuck Bush Sr. This was followed by the Clinton administration's doctrine from containment to enlargement that pursued a neoliberal foreign policy aimed at expanding markets and democracies in Eastern Europe and elsewhere. Then came Bush Jr.'s the Bush Jr. war presidency, which after the 9/11 attacks embarked on a so-called global war on terror and launched 2 major wars within 2 years. Hooray! All the bad things. Things to note. Bush Sr., neocon, engaged in a hot war. Clinton, neoliberal, engaged in soft power economic warfare. Bush Jr., 2 hot wars. The Obama administration refocused its efforts on fixing the US economy following the disastrous wars in the 2008 financial crash. Now, this is following. We're still in them, so I'd say during these disastrous wars and following the 2008 financial crisis. It committed to downsizing the US's strategic commitments around the world and pivoting to Asia in a failed attempt to contain a rising China militarily and economically, which, yeah, you're not going to be able to contain China. And that's part of the problem that I see going on. China not exactly good. Now, I know that's gonna get some people mad, but China's a communist country. No, it's fucking not. Shut the fuck up. They're state capitalist. I have a meme saved that's exactly this. The Trump administration followed in its predecessor's footsteps, albeit in a populist and chaotic manner. But instead of leading the country forward, President Donald Trump evoked a bygone era in an incoherent attempt to make America great again. As a long-serving senator, Joe Biden supported the U.S. wars in Grenada and Panama in the 1980s, the Balkans in the 90s, and in Afghanistan and Iraq in the 2000s. The only time he opposed a war, the 1991 Gulf War, he later regretted it. So it's interesting. Biden did not want to get into the original Gulf War. Now, Grenada and Panama, why would you support those? The Balkans, why the fuck would you support that? Afghanistan and Iraq, that's a load of bullshit. The Gulf War, still probably bullshit. We got in to stop Saddam Hussein in Kuwait, but we really just wanted the oil out of that area. So, definite bullshit. All of this draws a pattern of clear hawkishness. However, Biden has also regretted his support for the disastrous 2003 Gulf War and has since held back support for U.S. military action, including the surge in Afghanistan, the NATO bombing of Libya, and even President Barack Obama's Red Line in Syria, which threatened to punish the Syrian regime if it used chemical weapons. Wait, I have to double check that. Wait, was that a Steam thing? Or was that... Nope. Okay. Alright, let's see what USA Today has to say. Particular focus on Iraq, since then Senator Biden voted yes, Desert Storm, and in favor of authorizing. Yeah, he voted against Desert Storm. Okay. Iraq has a way of making almost anyone look bad if they stay in the conversation long enough, but Biden has also made positive contributions to the policy-making process that need to be weighed in any net assessment of his record. Well, he supported the war, and that's what people generally on the left are mad about. The problem is the online left is really bad about having any goddamn nuance. They completely overlook any nuance or any making up for past mistakes. They just go, "Oh, you made this mistake. You're a piece of shit. Fuck you." They talk about rehabilitative justice and accepting people if they've changed, but then they never actually do it. So, if you're engaging with the online left, my recommendation generally is don't worry about it too much because they're going to shit on you regardless. Wait, was that the actual fucking article? Okay. Okay, yes, Biden voted to authorize the invasion. But as chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Biden held a series of hearings in the summer of 2002 that remained the best public discussion of the likely challenges any such military campaign would face. He underscored how complex any invasion and stabilization effort in Iraq would surely be. That the Bush administration chose to ignore the Senate's advice and prepare for war on the premise that overthrowing Saddam would be a cakewalk, as defense policy analyst Kenneth Adelman infamously predicted. Okay. We shouldn't have gone over there anyways, so I'm going to criticize that. All right, so let's see. He said, indeed, at the time, Biden said that in many ways the most critical question relates to our responsibilities, if any, for the day after Saddam is taken down, if taken down by the use of the U.S. military. This is not a theoretical exercise. In Afghanistan, the war was prosecuted exceptionally well, in my view, but the follow-through commitment to Afghanistan's security and reconstruction has, in my judgment, fallen short. It would be a tragedy if we removed a tyrant in Iraq only to leave chaos in its wake. Not weak. The long-suffering Iraqi people need to know a regime change would benefit them. So do Iraq's neighbors. We need a better understanding of what it would take to secure Iraq and rebuild it economically and politically. Oh, okay. That that doesn't actually that doesn't actually make it better. I mean, from a nuanced perspective of if they're going in regardless, then it technically does make it better. In a small sense, because he was trying to think about what to do afterwards, but he still could have voted no. And then after knowing that it was passed and was going to go in, because if he voted no, it would still be 76 to 24 at that point. So it would have passed without his vote, and then he could have mentioned this. Oh God. By 2006, Saddam Hussein was long gone, and tragically, so was any semblance of stability in Iraq. At that time, building on a concept first developed by Leslie Gelb of the Council of Foreign Relations, Okay, so that was a concept developed by somebody else. Biden proposed partitioning Iraq. The Kurds in the north, the Sunnis in the west, and the Shia in the center and east, each with their own self-governing areas. Hmm, I don't like the idea of another country coming in and saying, okay, we're going to partition this, and you're going to get this, and you're going to get this, and you're going to get this. Pretty fucking bad. Oh, wait a second. Hold on. If this is true, Biden consulted frequently with Iraqi leaders of various stripes and attempted to rein in the increasingly sectarian ways of Shiite Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki, who was trying to ban numerous Sunni leaders from Iraqi politics and stack the government and military with his own lackeys. That Biden was ultimately unsuccessful was tragic, since it led to the rise of ISIS. Okay. Oh, geez. Okay. What I want to know is, are they Hezbollah? Jesus. They are just not liked. Hamas opposes them? The Islamic Front? Like, look at this. They've got a load of shit. Sunnis. Yep, trying to ban numerous. It adds up. This could be part of the reason that this happened. Okay. See, this I did not know. Okay, so what is this? Adds up. Adds up. Yep. We can actually have the fucking readout. Okay, so that's after. So I need like, huh, it does add up though. Met with him, talked to him about stuff. He did have to fight back against ISIL, although in my particular opinion, uh, looking at how this was done, I mean, this is actually critical of Iraq at the time, and moderately, because I mean, it's reporting on facts, but the facts actually don't show ISIS as being like the ultimate evil at their formation. They're really not good, but this article doesn't make them look like they're the ultimate evil. Just saying. That's the interpretation that it leads to. They're not good. I do not like ISIS or ISIL. The Islamic State of Iraq and al-Sham. The region of Syria, known in modern literature as Greater Syria, Syria-Palestine, or the Levant. Yep. Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant. ISIL. ISIL. This is true, but I mean, yeah. In retrospect, the United States should have backed the moderate Ayad Alawi, which, yes, that is, no, go away. By earlier mistakes, the Obama-Biden team recovered smartly in 2014. Obviously, these are going to be kind of disgusting liberal rags to a lot of leftists, but if you know how to read information out of any article and you can go and check shit, then, you know. Now, I mean, Biden is Biden. He's not good. He did vote for the war in Iraq. He supported pretty much every war except for the fucking Gulf War. 91. But that does not mean that we cannot try and utilize him. Now let's go back to here. Because it seems like we've already been able to try. So as you see, there's a pattern of cautiousness here too, which I believe will prevail in the foreign policy strategy of the Biden administration over the next 4 years, along with greater emphasis on strengthening multilateralism and reshaping geoeconomics. Okay. And this is Al Jazeera's article, so this is one of my favorites. This is clear from Biden's national security agenda, which promises to restore America's prosperity and leadership. The agenda is based on a study conducted by the veterans of the Obama administration at the Washington think tank, the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. It takes stock of the past 30 years and proposes a foreign policy for the middle class. The phrasing. Two of the authors, Jake Sullivan and Salman Ahmed, became Biden's national security advisor and his director of the State Department policy planning, respectively. But what does this really mean? And will it work? The first pillar of this agenda echoes Trump's America First doctrine, but takes a broader, more progressive view of geoeconomics beyond trade and manufacturing goods. So while the Biden administration defends free trade, it commits to offsetting any collateral damage through domestic investments that serve middle-class America. That's a better step than we've had. The second pillar rightly assumes that globalization has disproportionately benefited the nation's top earners and multinational companies and aggravated growing economic inequality at home, and therefore commits to revamping the trade mechanisms to correspond better to the needs of the average American. That's pretty dope. At least the phrasing of that. Okay, I'm just getting a shitload of likes on Twitter from somebody. The phrasing of this, okay. I mean, it's true. Okay, I'm gonna need to set this, like, but it's the thing that controls my OBS. So I don't have to pull it up, but I do anyways, because I'm an idiot. Okay. But I do like this here. See, this, in principle, I think is a good first step, because it says middle class America, and let's face it, the middle class has shrunk so much. We need to get every single human being on this planet to be petite bourgeois. I can explain what I mean by that. So, Marx says that the petite bourgeois are the people who own small businesses, but also provide labor for those small businesses. In a broader sense, like converting it to today, because they were the handicraftsmen and shit like that back then, but, you know. In a broader sense today, a small business owner, like my boss, would be petite bourgeois. Because he puts in an absolute shitload of work. He does. But I also put in a really good amount of fucking work. And both my other coworkers, I can be honest and say that they may put in slightly more output than me. They're just a little bit faster on average. Now, I do have to drive a lot more. And since I'm not somebody who's prone to going over speed limits very often, because A, I'm in a big ass truck and I'd like to be able to stop, and B, I know how people are, and none of you know how to drive. Not a single one of you. So, anyways, he puts in a shitload of work, and I put in a shitload of work. And everybody at the office puts in a good amount of work. Collectively. He just owns the place, so he extracts value from our labor as well as his. And that is petit bourgeois. Now, Marx talks about workers owning the means of production. That's the first step, the most basic tenet of socialism. Engels even wrote that if we were to abolish private property, which, if you're not very narrow-mindedly interpreting theory, and you actually read it, and you think, private property, in the sense that they talk about, is different from personal property. Private property is talking about things that produce goods for society. Your production areas. Those are currently privately owned. Because he makes the distinction that that you're working on for somebody else's privately owned shit. And you're selling your labor hourly for using somebody else's privately owned stuff. Because you don't own it. And so you're having to work for somebody else. They have the tools and they have the money to be able to pay you. So you have to sell yourself to them hourly. That's why they called it wage slavery. Because, in a sense, you were selling yourself for your labor to be able to survive. But slavery was differentiated because, A, they didn't choose to sell themselves, and in a sense, they would make the distinction that you don't actively get to choose to sell your labor in the current state of affairs. Because if you don't, you die. But they were forced into slavery as opposed to being forced into wage slavery. One, you didn't even get the choice to go. You didn't choose where you went. You just were taken and bought, and then you got no say in anything. So, regular slavery, way worse than wage slavery. Wage slavery is still bad. It's still exploitation. Anyways, and so that's what is meant by private property, is like where things are made for society. Personal property is things like where you live. Jeez. Somebody is literally trying to argue with me about personal versus private property. And then they come out and they're like, I'm not even a Marxist. I picked up some of this stuff from Hegel. Ben Shapiro has one of the better contemporary reads. I'm sorry, but that had me losing no. I'm done. Anyways, we're going to move on. We're going to get to the third pillar. The third pillar delineates a more creative approach that breaks domestic foreign silos to render foreign policy more responsive to domestic needs. I didn't get here. Okay, you need to sit right there. I don't care. This has become a priority with the onset of the coronavirus pandemic, as the US and other developed nations found themselves dependent on China and others for essential medical supplies. Yeah, because it's globalization. We do need to be able to provide some of this stuff for ourselves, but I don't think it's necessarily bad that we can call on other people and be like, hey, we need some medical supplies, and those people are like, okay. The fourth pillar wisely recognizes the need to banish lofty or arrogant foreign policy goals that are detached from domestic needs, and foresees shifting defense spending towards research and development that advances the U.S. innovative edge. It advocates abandoning transactional relations a la Trump in favor of broad and constructive engagement with the international community, like China's doing. A la Trump, they say. The fifth pillar seeks to restore the international. Okay, actually, let's cover this. The fourth pillar. Let's analyze this shit right here. Because this is news analysis. Oh my god. The fourth pillar was okay, need to banish lofty or arrogant foreign policy goals that are detached from domestic needs. Yes. And foresees shifting defense spending towards research and development. Good. That advances the U.S. innovative edge. Hopefully, it's not for military. It says shifting defense spending. That advances the U.S. innovative edge. That may be technological advancement and things like that. So if I interpret this correctly, there's a few different ways that this could go. And so we have to walk each path very specifically. So if it shifts from standard defense towards research and development of better like weapons to advance US innovative edge, I'm not really in favor of that. If it's shifting it towards, because I think they said there hadn't been anything, but this may be infrastructure development and research and development on other things, technologies, cybersecurity, things like that. I think that might be better if he's cutting back on like the current military budget and shifting it into things that'll actually help like the population, which is what was implied. Then cool. If it's weapons and shit like that for killing things, nah, not a fan. So let's hope it's the good one. It advocates abandoning transactional relations. It says a la Trump, but also a la China in a way, in favor of broad and constructive engagement. If I'm reading this in a literal sense, Belt and Road Initiative type thing. Because they're just building up infrastructure in other countries. And I mean, they do get to put military bases in places, but you know. So I guess it is a bit transactional. Well, I guess we'll have to see in what way this is done, because this is broad and constructive engagement is, well, very broad. There's not a way to pinpoint what he means by this. The fifth pillar seeks to restore the international credibility of U.S. leadership and strengthen existing alliances while leaving the door open for improvement of relations with global competitors like China and Russia. That is good. So while it may initially take a tough position on Moscow or Beijing, the Biden administration will likely adopt a pragmatic approach to national security, which rejects the idea of restoring U.S. primacy in a unipolar world. escalating a new Cold War with China, or waging a cosmic struggle between the world's democracies and authoritarian governments. Will likely adopt a pragmatic approach. Yeah, because we don't need to be like the fucking best. We just need to get along with each other, goddammit. But the agenda is nonetheless quite ambitious and may require many years, if not decades, to materialize, if at all. Why? Yeah. First, it runs contrary to the conventional wisdom of Washington's foreign policy establishment, which one of former Obama advisors has mockingly called the blob. Yep. Second, there is little to restore and much to fix and remake. Yeah, as the world has already moved on since the Cold War. Well, not not really. The Cold War effects of still they're still rippling through. Russia's still kind of really salty. We're pretty salty still. So, come on. Anytime you mention communism, think about that. That's a result of Cold War. And third, the 78-year-old president is a man of continuity, compromise, and consensus. That's true. He lacks the necessary oomph and drive to see this ambitious agenda through. He is more likely to consult Republicans on the other side of the aisle and allies on the other side of the Atlantic than to dash forward with his Democratic majority in both houses of Congress. He should do that, though. In other words, Biden may talk the talk, but it is doubtful if he can walk the walk. True. Or if he has the energy to tackle the urgent crises that have been either aggravated or neglected by his predecessors in, say, the Middle East. True. So while his administration is rightly pressuring Saudi Arabia to end the war in Yemen, it has so far avoided tackling the equally horrific war in Syria, where Russia is far harder to persuade. It is advocating a return to the Iran nuclear deal, but is not taking the necessary immediate steps to rejoin it. Well, they're facing a lot of pushback on that in some ways, but they have a supermajority, so he should still just do it. It is criticizing the Egyptian regime's dismal human rights record, but has proceeded with a $200 million arms sale to the Egyptian army. Oh boy. Hey, look. Ways to criticize Biden. Because that is such a rare thing. It is speaking favorably of restoring relations with the Palestinians, but does not seem ready to pressure Israel to free settlement building or end its occupation. Okay, that may be because that's a very tricky situation to go for, and doing that without damaging relations too heavily might be a thing, but in my opinion, fuck it. They're committing a genocide. End the occupation. And it is taking its sweet time deciding what to do about its military presence in Iraq and Afghanistan, let alone figuring out its endgame there. Yeah, that's... We need to get him out. We need to, like, pressure him. In sum, it is one thing to draw an ambitious agenda for national renewal and agree to a national security doctrine or and a whole other thing to see them through. This is especially true when it comes to a world power like the US, where shifting direction is more like steering a tanker than turning a speedboat. So expect Biden to move quickly to undo Trump's undoing of Obama, but then move slowly, consult patiently, prioritize deliberately, and act proportionately. Considering the painful past 4 years, not to say decades, I would be happy if Biden even starts the process of doing the megalomaniac mindset that has thus far shaped U.S. neoliberal and neoconservative foreign policy. Ooh. Marwan Bishara. I'd like to talk to this guy. I never will, but I'd like to. He seems very intelligent. So that's a thing. This got shared to me earlier, and then I turned around and went ahead and posted it on Twitter, saying I was going to talk about it. So, on paper, as it said, his foreign policy proposals here are pretty decent. They're not. I still see some problems on the wording and the potentiality of some of the things, such as shifting defense spending towards research and development that advances the U.S. innovative edge. I'm not entirely sure what that's meaning, you know? It could be a few different things, and I'm not sure which it means. I only went down two of the paths because I have had a very shit day. And this is not my actual job, so that's a fact. Although, you never know. It could be a mix of the two, where they're trying to like rebuild the infrastructure and the grid and everything because that would make it a little bit tougher. And then they're also spending ways to like, and hopefully they can make like cryo freeze guns or something so we stop killing people. And then maybe when we get, well, not because that could cause detriments, but maybe we could do the thing that I saw on YouTube where there was like a gang territory or whatever, and somehow I don't know the full story of it, but everything ended up turning from drive-bys and stuff. Now it's just paintball wars. So that was cool. Like they just, I think it was just like instead of going and shooting them one day, they took paintball guns out and just shot them, and it just started a change. So that was pretty positive, I think. I do think that yes, on paper, this is really good, very good. Not perfect, but if you analyze this and compare it to Trump's foreign policy, Obama's foreign policy, things like that, on paper and in actuality, this is better. You can go back all the way. And this is, on paper, the best foreign policy that a president, to my knowledge, has offered on paper. I haven't looked through everybody's fucking foreign policy, though. I've read about some of them. Some of them had really good foreign policy and terrible domestic policy. So, Anyways, this is, on paper, possibly one of the greatest foreign policy proposals that America has seen from the president. Like the actual sitting president. Doesn't mean it's going to happen in any way. And this article rightly points out that Biden is kind of a doddering old fool who's willing to try and compromise with Republicans instead of pushing forward with the, supermajority that he was handed for him to do what he needed to do instead of trying to reach out to the fucking Republicans. We don't need them. If you quit reaching out and compromising with them and accomplish goals, you know what'll happen? Uh, uh, people will vote Democrat. And if you keep doing it, people will keep voting Democrat as long as you keep benefiting them. Now, what you could also do is fail miserably. Trump is running a third party. GOP is kind of splitting over that. And if you guys fail fucking horribly, and we can keep doing our job as leftists and pulling people over to the left, we will win the Green Party. We can get the Green Party in the office. And we will have 3 goddamn parties. Hopefully not 4. So if we can get, like, who's the current Green Party? We get Angela Walker. Ralph Nader. Jeez. It's Green Party US, Socialist Party USA, Socialist Alternative, Legal Marijuana Now, Party of Minnesota, Independent Socialist Group. Did I hit it? Okay, there we go. All right, we're back. Sound freaked out. Central Illinois DSA, Democratic Socialist of Salt Lake, Colorado Springs DSA, Student Loan Justice. Go away. I do kind of want to join Green, but you know. See, and this I kind of enjoy because they want to keep, you know, existing alliances and stuff, but also kind of be able to reach out to like China and Russia and be like, hey, we can work together. And if done properly and not super like sneakily and connivingly and like coercively, the way I fear Biden might do, or at least his policy advisors may push him to do, then it could work out. We might be able to start, you know, 'cause the thing I fear, like people say that I've heard people talking about how the global revolution will start in the South, like the global South, and considering that like the US is known to just like fuck anyone up who tries to do socialist stuff, I'm not entirely sure of that. I think they may be scared. I think the US, the biggest opponent to socialist tendencies, should should probably be brought down on that level. Like, no, we need to like step away from these coups, these insurgencies, these fucking all this bullshit that you guys keep doing foreign policy wise. And we're gonna elect actual legitimate full blown commies, my comrades, anarchists into the uh US government. US Anarchist Party. Yes. No. No, no, no. Spartacus Educational. Yeah, sure. International. The first International. Ah, I like CPUSA. I dislike their uh uh thing actually. That you might want to change that because yeah, I like the Communist Party of the United States is like a mouthful and trying to shorthand it pretty bad, you know. I do like the analysis of Biden here though. And there is a correlation between Biden trying to put pressure on the Shiite prime minister at the time, and the forming of ISIS, because he was trying to get them to be not exclusionary and banning entire practices from participating in government. And so they decided to band together, the Sunnis, and start revolting because they were being left out of the political process. Yeah, no shit. The good thing the US isn't reliant on one form of energy as it stands. Oh, they're probably going to talk about. Let's see. How long is this? 3 minutes? Got it.
By the midsummer, President Biden says.
Nope. Damn it. No, it's gone. Fox News USA shouldn't be dependent on one energy source. I want to find that. I'll never find it. They deleted it. It was 3 minutes and 59 seconds, and I'll never find it again. Oh well. I don't know why that's still there. I don't know. It made no sense to me. Okay. Oh, here we go. Over-reliant. That's what they said.
All right, record low temperatures and
So I did find it again.
historic winter storms continue to hit hard across the Southwest. Millions of Texas residents have been left without power, heat, and some water for over 36 hours, and they're now facing yet another round of winter weather. This is a direct result, frankly, of bad decisions regarding green energy versus fossil fuels, okay? This is one of these real-world experiences where we can test the proposition that we should throw out fossil fuels, oil.
Nope. I already know where he's going with this. He's going to talk about how the wind turbines freeze up in the winter, and so they're not going to be an efficient form of energy. And so he's going to say that the Green New Deal or something like that and green energy is all bunk because wind turbines in Texas fucking froze because they didn't go for the heating packages that are available on wind turbines because it shouldn't fucking freeze in Texas, but it is because of fucking global warming, which fossil fuels contribute to, and you were advocating for because you were a billionaire piece of shit.
Oil, gas, coal, etc., and rely completely on renewables, which struck out in this Texas sub-freeze storm.
They put this out today? Oh my god. Oh, is that all it takes to prevent that? Put something over the front? I need... Okay. How does that work? Pop, pop. Okay. Sounds pretty good.
So let's bring on a great friend, former Energy Secretary Dan Briette, who knows as much or more about this as anybody. Dan, it's great to see you, my friend. Talk to me.
Larry,
You've been
great to see you as
interviewed
well, Larry.
before.
Congratulations on the new show.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it very much. Can I just ask you something? There's a story running about, I'm not sure I get this right, but, quote, carbon windmill blades didn't work or some such thing. You have a different take on this, but what's that all about? Can we clear that up at the top?
To rise the wind turbines as well as other parts of the electricity generation facilities and the grid itself. And there are newer technologies that are coming online for the wind industry that will allow these turbines to work much more efficiently, not only in the wintertime, but also in the summertime as well. And that's something that you and I were part of at the U.S. Department of Energy. Our national laboratories are working on these types of technologies right now.
But in fact, I mean, the points you've made and others, Rick Perry was on network yesterday, you just can't rely on one power source. Isn't that what you're saying? That you wanted a portfolio.
No, that's right, Larry.
That was our policy. And they seem to be cutting it back. I mean, renewables are fine, Dan. I think you and I can agree. We like all of the above, quote unquote. But that's not what I'm hearing. What's your take on this?
No, that's exactly.
Yeah. Although with the new... Uh... Yeah. We'll check out what they have to say on that, but...
Right, Larry. What we want to do is have a very diverse energy supply, and that includes renewable technologies. It includes solar. It includes wind. It includes things that we haven't yet seen. It's things like fusion, nuclear fusion energy as well. But we
Yep.
also need to maintain our base load electricity generation here in America, and that involves natural gas. That involves
No.
coal in certain
No.
instances in certain parts of the country. And it's very important that we not eliminate those types of fuel too quickly, because as we have just seen in Texas and as we saw last year in California, when you become over reliant on one form of energy and one form of electricity generation, you put yourself and your citizens at risk.
No. It's not the energy system. It's not the energy sources. It's their fucking grid. It wasn't built to withstand freezing. The fuck do you mean? Oklahoma's grid is barely bent to withstand it, and we get all of the weather. The only thing we don't actively get is the actual hurricane. We still get the heavy-ass fucking rains from hurricanes that hit Texas and California. We still get... Well, now we get earthquakes. We have tornadoes. We have fucking mudslides. In some parts, not very often, but sometimes. Not nearly as bad as like New Mexico and shit. But we have like all of it. We even get blizzards and ice storms. Oklahoma has ice storms. Just here you go. this isn't new. I mean, this one is a lot worse than any other one I've been in, except for one in like 2009, I think, 2008, somewhere around there. And it was really, really brutal. But I just wandered around and did shit because I didn't have a driver's license at the time. And so, yeah, it was cool. I just got to walk around.
And that's something that we're going to have to evaluate as part of this event in Texas. We need to understand what happened. Were the pipelines dependent upon the renewable energy out in the western part of Texas or not? And if they were, then I would argue that we have the equation exactly backwards. We can't make our baseload electricity, our natural gas pipelines or our natural gas utilities, completely dependent upon intermittent and, frankly, sometimes unreliable renewable energy.
They're usually extremely reliable. Wind energy can't be used everywhere. That is true, because not everywhere has high enough winds. Although any place that has like the whirligig on the top of your house and they spin, you can outfit those to generate electricity because they already use kinetic energy, and all you have to do, yeah, you can make those to generate electricity, and they don't kill birds, and almost every house seems to have them. So if you did it right, you could generate power that way, and that would be useful. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, yeah, the Wall Street Journal editorial today blamed Texas in part. Too much reliance on wind, too much reliance on those, juicy tax credits that came under W. Bush and Obama and so forth. You're saying, let's work the technology. Can I just get real quick, running out of time, Dan Bria? What about nuclear? Can we start using nuclear more?
We should. We have to make it. We should. We have to take away the regulatory regime that we're currently operated under and make it more efficient and more inexpensive to build, Larry. But it's a great form of energy, and it happens to be carbon free.
No. Okay. I do not disagree that it is inexpensive, or it could be inexpensive, but it is carbon free and it's efficient. I disagree with removing regulations on fucking nuclear technology. I think that's really dumb. I don't know. There could be some that are bad that could go to make things a little bit more efficient. But I mean, come on. You can't just reach over and just remove uh regulations off of nuclear technologies. That's bad. All right. September 27th, cost effectiveness and feasibility analysis for bladeless turbines. Utilization of renewable technologies, especially in solar and wind sources, growing at a much faster pace than the rest of the economy in Europe and worldwide. The significant cost reduction of solar, photovoltaics, and wind power during this time have increased their attractiveness for those customers who are interested in saving money and help the environment with self-generation systems. This article is going to briefly explain the current situation of different technologies in the market and try to give a reference of what is important to analyze to get a general idea about the possibilities of investment in your own renewable installation. Small wind. Low power wind turbines are a great method of supplying renewable energy to households, urban networks, and infrastructure, or off-grid systems when it is required. When setting up in favorable conditions, they can provide clean energy in the most satisfying way, despite that they aren't as powerful as other energy generation methods. The given article shows some features of each wind technology currently available, collecting the advantages and disadvantages of them. To start with the analysis, it is important to highlight the two main families existing in wind technology. Horizontal axis turbines, HOT. Vertical axis turbines, VOT. We are adding a newborn third family just for vortex turbines. Horizontal is the most common type. Yeah, see, this is like the whirly gig. It's got this on all four sides, except it's... Yeah, see? It's that, except that. Turbine ventilator, these things, master flow. We've always called them a whirly gig. Must be a my family kind of thing. But there's a book called Whirly Gig House. Ah, shit. Okay, but yeah, these things. You could strap these up to be... I mean... So they, okay, these aren't as powerful. But they generate almost constantly. 3 meters a second wind speed. Or 3 miles. Must be 3 meters per second. Meters per second. Yeah. And that produces 100 watts. So if you had this and this, you still couldn't run my computer. If you just had one of each, that would not run my computer. My computer takes 1,000 watts. But this is with like one of each, that is. So, to run my house, I could see it would be a good supplement at the moment. I don't know the viability of using them just solely to power a house. But supplementation, probably a good thing. Did I ever? I didn't. It just ended. Properties. We could just loop that. And then lower the volume even more. Because I'm just kind of talking. So. They are very efficient though. See, these you lose 57% of your power generation. And the higher up you get, that is. And these, when you hit 8 meters a second, you're at... Okay. Yeah, see, wind energy is still fairly inefficient. Hydroelectric energy is the most efficient, with nuclear being right behind it, like right on its heels, as far as how much energy you lose for what you produce. Let's see what investment is the better factor. Yeah, because this you have to get to 4, and then it starts to shoot the fuck up, and then it drops off, and the horizontals kind of drop off, and this has a steady curve until you hit about 7, and then it spikes. Not spikes, but like turns a little bit more sharply up. It makes a obtuse angle. So it goes to okay, that's kilowatts versus 1 kilowatt, 60 Oh. Kilowatt hour per year. Okay. Yeah. I mean, they do kind of look like dildos. But maybe you could get one that doesn't look like a dildo. You could have a flatter top, so it's not a dildo. So it looks so instead of looking like that with its base, it looks like and then, you know, the base is like, the top is like a flat, but it's a circle instead of being a rounded thing. You see, this is all like colored in, and then this is colored in, but gotta be a lot darker. Oh. Oh, if I have the right tool. So it's like that instead of like this, you know? You know, what am I doing? I can just beep, 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 beep. You see? You see the difference there? I do. And I think it's pretty stark. I gotta put my leg up for a second. Ah, jeez. I think. Oh, excuse me. I think I'm going to take a break here in just a moment. Because I've covered... Alright, you know what? Let's go over this real quick.
We're learning more about the Biden administration's plans for reparations. At the White House press briefing Wednesday, Politico reporter Eugene Daniels asked Press Secretary Jen Psaki about how the president would tackle the issue.
Well, he's supported a study of reparations, which I believe is what's being discussed, and studying the continuing impacts of slavery, which is being discussed in this hearing on H.R. 40, I believe it is. And he continues to demonstrate his commitment to take comprehensive action to address the systemic racism that persists today. Obviously, that is having that study is a part of that.
Maya King reports the president supports the idea behind the bill and Vice President Kamala Harris endorsed it when she was in the Senate. But as Maya reports, that might not be enough to get a proposal to study reparations for slavery to Biden's desk this Congress. And Maya joins me now from Washington. She's a politics reporter for Politico. Hi there, Maya. Thanks very much for being with us. So can you give us some background, first of all, on the bill known as H.R. 40?
The bill was introduced in 1989 originally, so it's been introduced in every Congress now for more than 3 decades. It establishes a commission to actually study the impact of slavery on African American communities and the role that the United States government played in perpetuating these systems that may have impacted Black communities negatively. Now, the challenge with actually passing it, of course, really lies in a disconnect between what representatives would like to ultimately see this commission achieve. Some are nervous or skeptical of using perhaps taxpayer dollars to fund direct payments to African Americans, while others, especially Sheila Jackson Lee from Texas, who has now sponsored the legislation for 3 Congresses, has maintained that this is really just to establish a commission, to begin the process of understanding exactly the harms done as a result of enslavement and several policies, and how Congress can begin to recommend ways to rectify those harms.
And Maya, why has this gained momentum in the past couple of years?
In 2019, actually, was when we really saw the most attention paid to this legislation. As you mentioned, Vice President Kamala Harris actually signed on to the Senate version of this piece of legislation as a co-sponsor. And now it's gained more traction this year, in part because of the role that the Biden administration has played in saying that they support racial equity legislation, and the fact that over the last year, the racial inequities, particularly the impact of the coronavirus, economic downturn, the housing crisis as a result of a lack of funds in communities of color specifically, all of these have really underlined the need for support and the racial inequities that exist that have distinctly and disproportionately impacted Black communities. A number of reparations experts and advocates that I spoke to ahead of yesterday's hearing really emphasized the fact that this hearing is being held for the first time in many years within the first 100 days of a presidential administration. And so they point to that as one positive step, or at least something that they can say represents this issue really being taken seriously, not just by Congress, but by the White House as well.
And you note that it's not clear how committed the White House is to H.R. 40 just yet, but before it can get to Mr. Biden's desk, of course, Congress has to pass it. So what are the specific challenges there?
Well, the biggest challenge to passing this legislation, of course, is making sure that Democrats have the votes. Also, in talking with reparations experts, not just on the advocacy side, but those on the Hill, have pointed out that Democrats' slim majority in Congress is one impediment to passing this legislation, because not only are Republicans vehemently opposed to this bill, moderate Democrats have really been more in favor of more piecemeal approaches to rectifying the issues and racial inequities that we see. Some have supported housing vouchers instead of reparations committee. Some have also proposed universal programs that might not necessarily apply specifically to Black communities, but could disproportionately impact them in a positive way. And I should also note, as my colleague Eugene asked during yesterday's press briefing, President Biden is also in a position to use an executive order actually to establish this commission, which would then give Congress the responsibility of moving or leapfrogging a bit forward to actually begin recommending a reparations program or drafting legislation that would go beyond the scope of a commission to actually starting to understand really what these programs would look like in practice. So there are several steps that have to be taken, obviously, here for this to even make it to the president's desk. But Democrats and advocates, those who are really in favor of passing this bill, say that this year, if not over the next 4 years, is kind of their last shot at really making this a reality.
And Maya, just to be clear, what would actually happen if the legislation was somehow able to sort of garner enough support, if those lawmakers were able to garner enough support for the legislation, and it did pass?
So it's clear that, Democrats are confident that this has a fighting chance in the House. They can get the votes that they need to pass this in the House. And perhaps if they can really be clear about the language here, move it through the Senate. And if it does pass and make it to President Biden's desk, what this would do is establish a commission of around 13 experts in finance, in economics, in sociology, in history, to study the impacts, the lingering impacts of enslavement, Jim Crow laws, and other systemic measures that have really impacted and negatively impacted Black communities. And from there, make recommendations to Congress about what exactly the reparations program could look like.
All right, Maya King of Politico. Maya, thanks very much.
Thanks for having me.
God damn it. I hate when leftists online don't actually read a news source. They read a fucking headline and they go, oh my god, Biden blah. Yeah, Biden's bad, but actually read the fucking thing, okay? When he said to the group of mayors and shit that his proposed minimum wage hike was unlikely to happen, it's because they don't have a guaranteed vote on it, which means that enough of the fucking Democrats in Senate are going to oppose it to make it to where we don't have the tiebreaker. So it's unlikely to fucking happen. Not that he's walking back on it, that putting it into the fucking COVID relief bill is gonna get enough people to oppose it. Now, if he doesn't put it as a standalone bill, then he's a fucking idiot. It's one of the dumbest things you could do. But if you put it as a standalone bill, then, you know, there you go. Yeah. Hannah's pissed at Brianna. A lot of people are pissed at Brianna Joy Gray, and a lot of people support her. I personally don't think she's that great. I do listen to her, though, occasionally, and I do agree with her on some things. So, you know. Okay, yeah, Ted Cruz went to fucking Cancun because he's a piece of shit. We all knew this. Okay. Ah. There we go. We've got two things to go over. Cuomo losing his shit, and Ayanna Pressley on a federal jobs guarantee resolution. We'll go over the Andy losing his stuff, and then we'll go over Ayanna, and then we're gonna jump into, I'll probably close this and save myself some RAM. Then I'm gonna jump into some Magic Arena. Oh, I can close this too. Don't save. And play some of that, and just kind of chat, go over some thoughts of the day and stuff, you know. But that's gonna be after this break. So let's go ahead and take that break. All right. We're going to go ahead and...
All right, let's talk about Andrew Cuomo.
What exactly did the governor want you to do? And what did he mean by "are you an honorable man"? What was the thing? Can you recount the phone call and what the point of it was, the request?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for having me on the show. And I think what's happening here is when we get closer to the truth behind the growing nursing home scandal in New York, Governor Cuomo tries to implicate you in the cover-up or threatens your livelihood if you don't lie for him. And that's what happened to me in the last 1 week. I was one of 6 lawmakers in that private meeting for 2 hours with Secretary DeRosa when she accidentally told us the truth, that there was a cover-up and fear that the information would be weaponized against Governor Cuomo. That moment, I had to tell the truth, and I had to let the public know what happened. And Governor Cuomo called me the next day at 8 p.m. while I was about to bathe my kids. I was with my wife, and for 10 minutes, he berated me. He yelled at me. He told me that, my career will be over. He's been biting his tongue for months against me. And I had tonight, not tomorrow, tonight, to issue a new statement, essentially asking me to lie and asking me, like, I heard and I saw a crime the other day. And he's asking me that I did not see that crime.
And I just want to reiterate, this is not a new thing for Andrew Cuomo, right?
No, it's not. Do they have? Or is it just them talking about it?
The Sapphire nursing home because one of my constituents and her daughter has reached out to me because she's been stuck in this nursing home without any ability to communicate with her. And she's actually, the daughter's here standing with me next to me, and she still can't get in and figure out what's going on with her mother. After we've discovered that there's between 30 to 60 people who might have passed away due to the coronavirus at this nursing home, we still don't have any answers from the state or the nursing director. So we're trying to get to the bottom. There are many families like my constituents here who deserve answers. They deserve to know that their families are being kept safe and they're practicing social distance. They're being tested. These are lives that every second count for these people inside of this nursing home. So we're here demanding answers, and we're not going to stop.
And so Cuomo characterized this as an obsession with him, basically, when Ron Kim was just looking out for his constituents at the early outset of the pandemic and was just purely looking for answers, but that's not allowed. And if the Democratic Party doesn't purge this dude, it's going to be a huge issue. It's already...
Yeah. Okay, well, so that's bad. Like, extraordinarily. Andrew Cuomo is a piece of shit. Let's face it. Out of the Nos. That's not good, people. I think we're gonna do this and then wrap up. So we'll analyze Ayanna Pressley and whatever economist she's speaking to. And we'll figure out what we think about this.
Thank you, Ricardo, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. It is really good to be with you, and I'm so proud to sit at this virtual table with Dr. Banks, Professor Hamilton, and Ms. Glover Blackwell today to affirm our commitment to building a nation where every person can work, live, and thrive with dignity. To declare that all people should have a right to employment that ensures a dignified standard of living. Our call to action is a historic one. It's one that builds on the legacy of those who have fought for economic justice and liberation for generations. Tomorrow, I will formally introduce a congressional resolution calling for a federal job guarantee, which would provide every person in America with an enforceable legal right to a quality job. Extending beyond a project-based approach, our resolution calls for the creation of federal jobs that meet long neglected community, physical, and human infrastructure needs, such as delivering high-quality care for children and seniors, building and sustaining 21st century transit systems, strengthening our neighborhoods, and protecting the environment. A federal job guarantee would provide public jobs for all adults seeking employment and would be funded by the federal government and implemented locally in close partnership with communities and reflective and responsive to community needs. So by ensuring everyone has access to a good job with dignified wages, safe working conditions, healthcare, and other benefits, including full worker rights and union protections. A federal job guarantee would address the current unemployment crisis, make our economy more resilient, begin closing the racial and gender income gaps, and lay the foundation for a truly just and equitable economic recovery. This is a bold idea. It's responsive to the needs of communities across the country. And the resolution speaks to a promise unfulfilled and a solution that meets the moment. In this time of uncertainty, the people who call America home deserve meaningful, dignified work and a livable wage. The idea that all people should have a right to employment that ensures a dignified standard of living has deep roots in American history, and it was a key demand of the civil rights movement. In President Franklin Roosevelt's proposed Economic Bill of Rights, the right to a useful and remunerative job was front and center. Nearly a century ago, Sadie Alexander, the nation's first Black economist, advocated a job guarantee to address racial discrimination against Black workers while improving labor market conditions for all workers. The 1963 March on Washington, where Dr. King delivered his iconic I Have a Dream speech, was a march for jobs and freedom. When hundreds of thousands gathered in Washington to demand voting rights and economic justice in the form of a massive federal program to train and place unemployed workers in meaningful, dignified jobs for decent wages. Coretta Scott King would later lead a grassroots movement in support of a federal job guarantee. And in recent years, there have been calls for a public option for employment, but the deep disparities exposed by the health and economic crisis we now face really does require and demand that we go even further. The time to establish a legal right to a job for all people in America is now. So today, we're proud to build upon and honor the legacy and work of generations of Black women civil rights leaders to introduce a historic resolution affirming just that. The civil rights leader Ella Baker once said, "People cannot be free until there is enough work in this land to give everybody a job." A job guarantee is an investment in the American people, our communities, and an equitable economy that works for everyone. Our ongoing struggle for civil rights demands our collective action to uplift the dignity, humanity, and freedom of every member of our society, and that begins with a federal job guarantee. So with that, I will pass over this virtual mic to Dr. Nina Banks, President of the National Economic Association.
All right. That was beautifully laid out by Miss Ayanna Presley. A federal jobs guarantee. Now, I'm an anarchist, but I still, as a pragmatist at the same time, believe that we can use the state while it exists to improve the conditions of people. It's something we can do if we had the right people, the willpower, and a stronger advocacy. I do think there should be we need an anarchist political party. I really do think so. Because it gets a bad rep. Now, I'm not necessarily the right kind of person for it. I don't necessarily have the best rep either. As in, I really don't have a reputation outside of some former relationships that I've had. But, you know, you live, you learn. So let's move on and listen to, I already forgot the name of the person that she said.
Thank you, Congresswoman Presley. In 1945, a year after President Roosevelt called for a second Bill of Rights, Sadie Tanner Marcel Alexander, the nation's first Black economist, advocated for full employment and a federal job guarantee. Dr. Alexander believed that unemployment was the central economic problem that our nation faced. She was also aware that persistent racial discrimination against Black workers relegated them to the status of marginal workers who suffered from chronically high rates of unemployment since they were the last hired and the first to be fired. Given this, Dr. Alexander knew that Black workers would especially benefit from full employment policies. She said that full employment was the only solution to the economic subjugation of Black workers, as well as the great masses of other workers. Sadie Alexander believed that all workers would benefit from full employment because it would provide job security. The threat of unemployment erodes workers' ability to negotiate with employers over better compensation and working conditions. Dr. Alexander believed that having a fully employed labor force would increase workers' pay and purchasing power. Therefore, she believed that the federal government should provide jobs that paid livable wages to all workers who were willing and able to work, but who were unable to do so because of the failure of the private sector to create enough jobs. Dr. Alexander maintained that the right to work was a fundamental right of citizenship. The example of the success of direct job creation during World War II was the lesson that President Roosevelt and Sadie Alexander drew upon when they called for a fully employed labor force in the post-war period. 3/4 of a century ago, Sadie Alexander promoted full employment as the solution to the overall problem of economic precarity and as the means for countering persistent racial discrimination in employment. She envisioned that full employment policies would ameliorate many of the economic problems that continue to plague workers in the U.S. Income inequality, involuntary unemployment, marginal work, inadequate wages, and racial disparities in access to good jobs. A federal job guarantee provides racial and economic justice while also recognizing the corrosive nature of economic deprivation in our communities and the benefits instead of shared prosperity that expands citizens' rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Banks. That's such important historical contextualizing. And finally, we'll hear from Professor Derek Hamilton. I'm sorry, actually, no. Next, we'll hear from Ms. Angela Glover Blackwell, founder of PolicyLink.
Right on.
Thank you. Thank you, Congresswoman Presley, for your leadership on this. Historically, this has been in the making for a long time, and never have we needed it more than we need it right now. The very idea that we could have a federal job guarantee that could be responsive to the angst that so many people have been feeling as we wonder, how are we going to recover from this economic crisis in a way that is fully inclusive and equitable? The way to do that is to guarantee everybody a job. We know that people are going to be slow to come back. And those who will be slowest to come back are those who need it most, those who are always targeted and discriminated against. We also know that during this time when so many jobs have been lost, the community needs have been great. The very idea that the federal job guarantee would be a way for communities to be able to have people do the work of rebuilding community, of investing in infrastructure, the human infrastructure for the care economy, as well as the infrastructure in transportation and other things that are so vital. We also know that people want to work, and too often people have to work without dignity, without the pay that really provides that dignity. To be able to create that floor so that the floor is worked with dignity, it will do something about the 40% of workers who earn less than $15 an hour. It'll also put pressure on private employers to be able to make sure that they are providing work with dignity and the dignity of pay. This is a moment in which we really can respond to the demand that we finally step into building an equitable economy. Everybody who wants to be able to work should be able to work. And what that will mean for parents, what that will mean for families, what that will mean for community, and what it'll mean for the earth and climate is just so essential. This is a big step forward, long time in the making, and I'm just so pleased to see this important step moving the way that we make sure that we live up to the promise that we make to people, that if they step forward to work, there are jobs with dignity that are there waiting for them, and many of them will help to build community and strengthen community. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you for speaking to the transformative impact that a federal job guarantee would have, and why it's not just about jobs. Grateful for your leadership and your partnership on this. And finally, we'll hear from Professor Derek Hamilton, Henry Cohen Professor of Economics and Urban Policy and Director of the Institute on Race and Political Economy at the New School.
Thank you, Congresswoman. It's an honor to be here and share the stage with my great colleagues and you, and appreciate all your leadership. So let me get right into it. By April of last year, our unemployment rate reached about 14.7%, or even higher. And that's the highest it's ever been since the Great Depression. The unemployment rate for Black workers in April was about 17% and about 14% for white workers. Usually the unemployment rate is far more dramatic, but we made a conscious decision to hibernate our economy to save lives. But as we've begun to relax some of our social distance rules, we've seen the reemergence of the adage that Black people in an economic business cycle are the first fired and last hired. Currently, the unemployment rate stands at 6.3% for everyone, 9.2% for Black workers, and 5.7% for white workers.
Wait, hold on, what?
But we made a conscious decision to hibernate our economy to save lives. But as we've begun to relax some of our social distance rules, we've seen the reemergence of the adage that Black people in an economic business cycle are the first fired and last hired. Currently, the unemployment rate stands at 6.3% for everyone, 9.2% for Black workers, and 5.7% for white workers. But the unemployment statistics that I've reported underestimate the economic toll of this pandemic. Underemployment, being out of the labor force, loss of health insurance, the mental and financial angst of unemployment associated with this pandemic or any other time takes a great toll on our society. The only way that an increase will not happen in terms of inequality as we get past this pandemic is if we have a change in our political economy towards a new structural policy that recognizes that changes on the margin won't cut it. To reverse decades and generations of poverty, discrimination, and economic and political concentration at the top, we're going to need a bold overhaul of our laws and our economy. And that needs to be anchored by the automatic stabilizer of a federal job guarantee.
I did not know that that was the percentage for the Black unemployment. I did know that they were usually fired first, last to be hired. Like, it's fucked up. There's the payment gap, the fact that if you the average time that a dollar stays in a Black community versus a white community is insane. For a Black community, on average, a dollar stays there for like 6 minutes. And for a white community, it's like 5 weeks. So that's on average. It's just averages. But that's pretty fucking weird. As in, they have to keep spending money, and it goes out of their community because they don't have enough capital to be able to open businesses as easily and shit. There's a whole fucking deal with it, going back to the fact that we had them enslaved, and then they were freed, but people were still fucking racist as shit, and so they did economic, like, laws to bar them from the system, and then when they were told that they couldn't bar them completely from the system, they started doing things like tipping so that they didn't really have to pay them, and they would get wages from whoever decided to tip them at the time. And then they instituted a minimum wage while they had the Jim Crow laws and stuff going on. And so they had to pay, but they managed to get it to where tip workers didn't get the same. And so there's this whole thing there. And then there was the bombing of Black Wall Street. There's a whole lot of things that go into it, but essentially we have really kept black people out of the economic system entirely. And really, getting them into capitalism is it's beneficial for them for now, because we can't just abolish capitalism all at once right now. I firmly believe that would just be I think we could make changes like democratizing the workplace. Everybody, if we just made it law that everybody owns a portion of the business that they're at, everybody works at a worker co-op at that point. Okay. That's a step. I'll accept that. It doesn't abolish the commodity form, but it does improve the conditions of the worker. This guy's laying out some fucking facts and statistics and shit. And I mean, current facts and statistics. And these two ladies, actually all three of these ladies, made historical arguments and gave reasons why there should be a federal jobs guarantee. He's giving statistics and stuff for current reasons. These are historical arguments supporting the need for it. This is a current statistically based one. Let's move forward and listen to what he has to say.
Stimulus plans championed on both sides of the aisle. They use tax incentives and deregulation to cajole or bribe a private sector to provide more jobs under the lure that this is going to create a dynastism, and it also with the goal of trying to rebuild the nation's crumbling infrastructure. The problem with this approach is that it leaves workers vulnerable to the whimsical nature of trickle-down employment and the instability of contingent work. Moreover, it's often a transfer of the value of our public physical and human infrastructure assets to corporate interests with no guarantee that the infrastructure will actually be built and shared in the first place. Instead, what the Congresswoman is calling for is a federal job guarantee to provide a direct source of employment, to trigger a multiplier stimulus effect across our economy and enable all workers, particularly those at the low end of the labor market, to bargain for better wages and benefits without the fear and destitution from the threat of unemployment. It would strategically change the U.S. economy away from low-wage work towards more moderate and high-wage jobs and buffer against employment transitions due to automation or any type of technological change. Not only would this job guarantee restore psychological balance to the millions of unemployed individuals who desire work but cannot, it would address the long-standing unjust and discriminatory barriers that keep large segments of stigmatized populations out of the labor force. And it would reverse the rising tide of inequality for all workers by strengthening their labor market bargaining power and ensuring that the U.S. lives up to its unfunded mandate as described earlier and actually achieve an authentic full employment and eliminate involuntary unemployment altogether. So reject the empirically unsubstantiated and even racist rhetoric that ignorance, so-called grit, and personal responsibility are the sources of inequality. Along with this neoliberal paternalism in which government attempts to coerce or incentivize insinuated defective people to behave accordingly and make better decisions. Instead, change the paradigm, be bold, work at the federal level, even local levels, and let's guarantee a right to quality employment and empower people with economic security, dignity, and authentic agency to define and achieve their goals.
Thank you, Professor Hamilton. As always, you provide us with both an education, truth-telling, and a call to action. So appreciate your thought leadership in this endeavor. And now we'll turn it back over to Ricardo.
Thanks, Congresswoman. Thanks, everyone. We will now move to questions from the media on the line. Just to reiterate, if you have a question, please use the raise your hand function in Zoom, and I'll call on you.
Okay, so questions and answer section. We're going to go ahead and see if they answer this in satisfactory manners. I really do like the idea of a federal jobs guarantee to improve the conditions of the worker, because if everybody can have a guaranteed job and a guaranteed standard of income that's actually decent, then that would go a lot further. Although I think there's some people out there, I think, who read Marx and Lenin and shit, and then they come to the conclusion that they need to have people in the shittiest fucking conditions to radicalize them. And it's like, no. You can point out the flaws in capitalism and be like, hey, look, this is gonna keep happening if this is the way we keep doing things. And eventually, you know, people will be like, you know what? You might be fucking right. Because people don't like being wrong. They don't. So we can work on it.
The raise hand function, you can find that under reactions at the panel at the bottom of the screen. We'll give folks a moment. All right. First up, we'll hear from Ilan Mui at CNBC.
Hi, thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it. My question is, how do you see some of these jobs interacting with private sector jobs that might be existing in the space already? Do you see this as being a replacement for some of the private sector work, or do you see this as additive to places where the private sector may be not willing or not able to go?
I'll take that, Ilan. This is Representative Presley. First, let me just sort of begin with a broader framework here. I know it is customary for folks to often only revisit the words of Dr. King and even to be selective in that in the observance of his birthday or during Black History Month. But I sit with his words and his texts often. And, you know, one of the things that he said that deeply resonates with me and I think is very applicable to this moment is that it was easier to integrate public facilities. It was easier to gain the right to vote because it didn't cost the nation anything. The fact is that we're clearly dealing with issues now that will call for the fundamental restructuring of American society. It is going to cost the nation something. And so, you know, as we find ourselves dealing with the gravity and the weight of these three conflated crises, and we're looking for how to have a just and equitable economic recovery, but also to chart a different path forward. The word reckoning keeps being thrown around. Well, a reckoning is something of, you know, epic proportion. And so I think given the scale and scope of the three conflated crises bearing down and expressed commitments to address everything from climate change to economic hardship to systemic and structural racism, a federal job guarantee allows us to accomplish all of those things. And so I really do see it as enhancement. And it does get us to that more than a return to a pre-COVID insufficient, unjust status quo normal, but is charting a better path forward. So it allows us to mitigate you know, existing hurt, have that robust recovery, and to chart a better path forward. So I really do see it as enhancement. And it's just really important that we have bold policy proposals that truly meet the scale and scope of the crisis.
I so appreciate that put in the context of a racial reckoning, because it certainly would do that in terms of making up for so many times when people who are Black and Latinx and Indigenous have been excluded from job opportunities in the economy. But it wouldn't replace private jobs, but it would put pressure on private employers, because by providing dignified wages, dignified livable wages, and having those jobs available to anybody who wants one, it would make it hard for the private sector to pay very low wages and not treat people with dignity. And so to the degree that there's any pressure on the private sector, it's pressure to be able to lean in, join the future, and treat employers with the respect that they are due, not just take advantage of people being desperate for work and taking any kind of job to be able to have a job.
Yeah, both of those answers I'm going to add to and say that they're spot on, and just say it also will complement good jobs and employers that desire additional infrastructure, both physical and human infrastructure. And we have historical precedent. The New Deal benefited the private sector by enhancing both our physical and human infrastructure. Imagine an industrial policy where workers are able to show up with better wages, better health care, and also some care associated with the federal jobs in the first place. If we're investing in a care economy, that's not only going to benefit people, it's going to benefit the private sector because their workforce will be better.
This is Nina Banks, and I'm just going to add from the context of Sadie Alexander, she absolutely envisioned that there would be additional jobs, and they would be jobs that would address urgent national problems. And as Derek said, not just physical infrastructure, but also human infrastructure. And so she believed that we needed to invest in jobs to address issues tied to housing, people who were living in slums, literacy, and also providing access to utilities for everybody within the country. So this is absolutely an expansion of work opportunities. It's not going to displace the private sector.
Great, thank you.
Overall, I haven't heard anything any dodging or anything really bad. I really do like this. This is wonderful. Okay, well, I do enjoy this. This is actually a really good policy. Hopefully it gets voted in. There's going to be some opposition to it, I'm sure, but as long as the economists and shit can lay out the way that it'll work and how it'll actually benefit everybody and stuff, and they do the job appropriately, and it's not just lefties who drool over something like this, but we can actually get it passed, then I think it'll be very beneficial to the material conditions of the working class. Because everybody can work, everybody can get a wage. It is still labor exploitation and shit like that. I know. But it's better than not being employed and dying. So as it sits, okay. So as it sits, I'm not even gonna finish the press portion of it. I don't feel like I have the time. I'm tired. I had a very long day. So what I am gonna do, we're gonna forego the magic and all of that. 2 hours and 20 minutes. Yeah. I think that's pretty good. Okay. What?
I'm taking them out. I'm taking them down. See ya. Goodbye. Oh. Yep. Another one. You're welcome. Sorry, just taking out the trash, you know. Just
Jeez. Okay. I had to know. Duke's stamina. He's interesting. Please do a real freestyle. Oh god, Destiny. 4 years ago. He's probably gotten better at it. Because, I mean... Oh, I can't even look up Rap God Destiny because it'll fucking demonetize this shit. Revolutionary Left Radio. Huh. If that's a consistent view count, then that's better than what I get. And it was only 2 hours ago? Jesus. Yeah. On average, that's way better than what I get. God, they just dumped a bunch of... Is this having to re-upload? Did they get dropped? Okay. I'm not sure. Anyways. The cum beast. Yeah, see, I understand, I guess, why people say they don't like Bosch, because most of them have never actually interacted with his content. They see the bad clips. Somebody clips it out, or they mention that he said the N-word once. I was actually dying because a buddy of mine on Twitter, Afro Lefty, said it's good praxis to use to use the N-word in a tactical manner and during advocacy. I fucking died because that was Vosh's like thing. Like he was debating a bunch of Nazis and they were actually just saying it, just left and right and center and just throwing it out there. And then one of them kind of stopped saying it and said the N-word instead. And eventually Vosh picked up on it, and because he was like, look, I needed to it was essentially like kind of asserting dominance and showing that he's unfazed by their use of fucking slurs and shit. So he was like, you can say, and then he proceeded, I'm not gonna say it. I'm not that ballsy, and also I don't feel a need to say it, or that there's any reason for me to say it. But so he did that to assert dominance and to show them it unnerved them. And he actually just blew them the fuck out after that because they were unnerved that a soy boy lefty man bun that's fat in their eyes just would casually say that. It put them off their guard. It put them on edge. They were like, wait, what the fuck? I've heard plenty of people actually defend this in the black community. The biggest one that I know of being, or the first one I should say, was the Percy podcast, episode 51. But I don't know. It's up to each person. And if you don't feel like watching him because he said it, whatever. That's you. But you can't say he's not a leftist. This is his constant. Okay. I know I was about to end, but we're just going to go on this. He hates suburbia, that sort of thing. Conservatives pretending that they care about women's sports. I haven't seen these. This one is a thing. Let's see. Boomer gets mad about trans people. Trans people. Trans beamers. Trans people. God damn it. Learning about the stock market from a filthy capitalist. No, being non-binary isn't sexist. Why I'm okay with Gina Carano getting fired. See the real-world benefits of defunding the police. And this was her political compass thing. She didn't go anywhere near where he thought she would be. Corporate towns video. He was wrong about stocks. Him admitting he was wrong. This CNN thing was brutal. Femboy question. He just yells at people about sexualizing femboys, which is a major issue. Getting losing brain cells listening to Abigail Shapiro. That's yep. Ranting about the Senate, politics, hating the Democrats. Coup in Myanmar. Shitting on Marjorie Taylor Greene. Talking with generational change. Shitting on Ben Shapiro. I've watched this one once or twice, but whatever. This one's just funny. And by funny, I mean he points out a pattern of behavior with Brianna Joy Gray that seems a little grifty. I like some of her takes. Some of her other takes I think are just being anti-Democrat and doing whatever she can to push ridiculous shit. Like, as soon as the $15 an hour minimum wage thing was introduced, she turned around and was like, it needs to be $25 today. Brianna, you know. I'm sure you know. You're smarter than this. I'm sure you know basic economics. That is not a viable fucking solution. And that it has to be done over time. It could be done more quickly than what the proposal was laid out. But you know that it has to be done over time. So stop with the stupid shit. Okay? You're smarter than that. I know you are. I've listened to you. I've seen you work with Bernie, work with other people. I've heard your speeches. I've heard your podcast. Come on. Debating Tyler Bluntman. Ranton coming on, talking to him. Talks to fucking, Denhams and Dylan Burns and Xander Hall, which people also cancel, probably because he interacts with Vosh. And Contra. Couldn't talk to Sean or any of those people because they don't like him. Talking with fucking Hakeem. Bernie doing his thing, you know. Yeah. Seriously. But, yeah. And Narcopack. That's Zoe. I think Zoe follows me. On Twitter. Hold on, I need to check that. Am I being validated by... That's... I have to find out. I'm sorry. That would be under this Twitter. Not my shitposty Twitter. Narco pack. No. But I would like to talk to Zoe about theory and stuff. But I mean, you know, okay. There's some missteps in Bosch's past. But come on. Who doesn't have those? And if you say you haven't ever said anything wrong or controversial or had a hot take or something like that that could be bad, shut the fuck up. Yes, you have. I guarantee it. You could be clipped in a way to make you look awful. I could. And I try my best not to. Huh. Yeah, because I have been trying to figure this out properly, but whatever. I'll work on it. Watch these. These right here, watch them. Says I haven't, but I have. I saw bits of them on Vosh's channel, and they directed me to Echo Gecko. So that's a thing. Anyways, that is going to be it for the night. I was, you know, just wanting to go over that real quick. So, you know what? Fuck today. Fuck the weather. Y'all have a good night.